for me.
Does it? Yeah, it sounds all
Yeah,
right for me. Okay, then.
right, good.
Right. Thumbs up. Right, folks. Sorry to everybody for this technical hitch first time, but hopefully we've got it right for you now. If anybody's listening, would you let us know if the sound is okay? Because I'm not actually using a microphone or anything. I'm just hoping that my phone picks up um, this speech. Okay, so welcome. As you can see, my name's Helen Quarmby, and this lovely lady with me is Sarah Joanne Ashurst. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself, a little bit about yourself as to your title and what you want to do, or what you
My
do, sorry,
title,
should I
yeah.
say?
Yeah, so I'm Sarah Joanne Ashurst, and I'm an elemental realm reader and energy healer. I basically help people connect back to the magic in their lives through my readings, healings, and my coaching. So that's me in a bit of a nutshell. What about you, Helen? Introduce us to you and who you are and what you
Well,
do and your
yeah.
title.
Well, my name's obviously Helen Quarmby. I'm a channeler and natural healer. And I channel, I sort of using channeled words, movement, and touch. I help highly sensitive women really um, uh, to sort of dissolve pain and step into the truth of who they really are, get back into their hearts. I do that by releasing or releasing trauma, old stories, protective patterns that are held in the body as trauma. So it's by releasing that, helping them to get back to their true nature, their true essence, really. So that's what I do. So tonight what we wanted to do was to get together, basically to introduce ourselves, because often we can see people online, can't we, Sarah? We can see them doing their stuff, but we don't know an awful lot about that person. So we thought it would be nice just to be a little bit more open as to where we've come from, a little bit about our journeys, and how we got to be doing this work, because it's been a bit of an up and down journey, wouldn't you say, Sarah?
Definitely. Such is
Oh,
life.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing that, when you start with what we call like a spiritual business, people think that that's it. You're all together. You're very well versed in everything, and it's not always like that, is it? It's taken a lot of work to actually get here, wherever here it might be. Do you want
Yeah,
to
and I
start the
think
ball?
I just think on that point, what you're saying, I think it's so true. And I think even though we might be here where we are on our paths and we might be quite way down our paths, we never stop learning, we never stop evolving, do we? We really
Yeah,
don't. And that journey
absolutely.
never stops
It
until,
doesn't.
one day I get my coat and I go up there, I'm always evolving and growing,
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So I think this came up in one of my cards today. Never, ever, ever compare yourself to somebody else, no matter how up there they might be, in terms of, the platform, what status they've reached. Don't ever compare yourself, because, as you said, Sarah, it's an ongoing journey, isn't it? Even beyond this life.
yeah, yes, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, very much so. And many of us
Oh,
have had many lives, and people we know around us have been in those lives with us sometimes. And yeah, there's so
yeah.
much going on as we're evolving all the time. So yeah,
There is.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, Sarah, Joanne, do you want to start off telling us a little bit, where it all started? Maybe do you want to start either with your childhood or maybe your working background, because obviously this is more of your life now in terms of your work, but where have you come from work-wise, maybe?
So work-wise, I'm past corporate. I had quite a corporate career, and I'll go back to my childhood in a bit. But yeah, I had a corporate career in manufacturing, and I was in supply chain and buying. So I was used to people selling to me all the time, and I got quite well. I did get very high. I was the only female on a management team, and we made toiletries and cleaning products, um, you know, and just got as high as I possibly could, and used to be quite ambitious, really, and I couldn't be more different. It's funny. It feels like that's a part of me that's, it's like a different part of my life. But, in terms of that now, I use so much of what I know from then in this part of my life now as well, in a way. But yeah, I had a very formal corporate career background, very almost unintuitive. But when I look back, I think actually I was really intuitive. I always had people in my office. I'd had all sorts of things happen, and people would often end up in my office and telling me things, and like imparting knowledge to me and sharing the secrets and stuff. And I look back and I think you were always intuitive. Then it's just to sort of switch that side off. So yeah.
Mm, mm.
What about you? Where's your like work background?
Well, the majority of my time was spent as a physiotherapist. I always had an interest in the likes of, say, complementary therapies. I absolutely love that. I'd always got an interest in the body, the function of the human body. And I did go, I qualified as an aromatherapist. But, that voice in the back of your head always says, oh, maybe you need to have something to fall back on, that kind of thing, that old story. So I ended up working in the field of physiotherapy, and I specialised working with people in later life in rehabilitation. And it's made me realise, so I, I love the body, but there was a point where actually I was a bit like you, Sarah, in that I was quite driven, but there came a point where it just fell flat for me after about 20 years doing it, and then I felt like there was something else that I wanted to do, but I wasn't sure. But it really gave me a good grounding about the physical side of the body. But working with people in later life, and looking back, it's made me realise about this element of trauma, just what that does to us. It sort of eats away at us, and we don't realise how many of those old stories we are actually hanging on to. And it's making me think of, that road sign where there's two elderly people walking, it's like warning elderly people crossing, which is not a nice sign. But it's like, that worn out,
The stupid.
weight heavy on your shoulders. That's what it actually does to you. So I've found now that, my two paths are really very much linked. So it's been quite an interesting route, really. Oh, yeah.
Mm, mm. To go back to your childhood, were you always like intuitive, or yeah? Like, let's go back to the beginning of our journeys. Like, did you start intuitive? And I can see loads of people are joining. So, hello, Karen and Maya and Alice Sam. You're all saying hello in the comments. So I just want to say hello as well.
Oh,
Thank you.
lovely. Hi, good
Got
evening, everybody. It's so nice to have people joining us. I can't see all the comments, actually. Are you all right, Sarah? Can you pick up on
Yeah, I
those?
can see them. And if you're watching us and you want to ask something along the way through, if you hear something and want to ask a question, ask questions along the way through, and we will come back to them and answer them. At some point. So Slow Wisdom, you just said hi, so hello to you. So yeah, so back to you, Helen. Go on about your childhood. Yeah.
I think I have, but I think I lost it through. It was quite. I think school life sort of marked the end of my intuitive uh, part, really. Well, you never really lose it, do you? It gets squashed and dampened down, I think. But I've always been extremely sensitive. When you are sensitive, you feel everything really strongly. So even when other kids say things to you that aren't quite nice, or teachers shout at you, or maybe you do something wrong, and it's like you get like a shock to your system. Going to school was a real shock. So I think I took that on board, and it made me disconnect from my intuition quite a lot, because mixing with so many other people, it's like you feel like you're bombarded. You don't realize that you're taking on a lot of other people's stuff. You can feel, like the old saying about when you walk into a room and if somebody's been arguing, even when the argument's over and nothing's been said, you walk in and you think, oh God, what's gone on here? You can feel the atmosphere, can't you? But if you imagine that times how many other children there are there, if you've got all these different um, personalities going on around you, I found that really, really difficult to navigate. And then you're being asked to be something other than who you are naturally, aren't you? Because as soon as you get into a school system, you're like squashed. It's like a sausage factory. You're like in this funnel of education whereby the ultimate goal is maybe to head towards your O level, showing my age now, your GCSEs, your O levels, your A levels, going to college, going to, university. And it's almost, I felt like, I suppose looking back, I'd lost a lot of my identity. So there was a lot of frustration in there, not really knowing anymore who I was or what was actually expected of me, because I felt, I think, so frightened of being in school. It's like, oh my goodness, well, what do I do next? What do they want me to be? So you try and, there was this um, real effort to fit in. That was the biggest marker for me. I didn't feel as though I fitted in. I think I had quite an old head on me because of some of my experiences that were quite fearful and traumatic. I was looking of ways as to how I could fit in, because I was going to sound the right lonely child now. I didn't particularly fit in very well, so I was looking for ways of trying to make those special friends. And in the early years of my school life, there wasn't anybody particularly special that I felt to link with. So sound a bit sad really, but yeah, it was quite a lonely time with school, and I think that made me lose sight of my real me. What about yourself, Sarah?
I really relate to what you're saying, and somebody, Karen Healing through Nature, she just commented and she's put, Helen, when you explain about being at school, that's exactly how I felt. But
Oh wow!
it's something I'd made myself forget about. So thanks for sharing.
Oh,
And
thank
I
you.
relate to what. Sorry, Kelly. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
No, no,
Um,
it's okay.
I relate to what you're saying, and I think a lot of us who are intuitive, we do feel like we're quite fitted in. So, and yeah, I can really relate to what you're saying, and especially about the bombardment of all that energy as well. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, um, I'm from a natural family of, my dad was a healer and he used to be able to take my headaches away and my leg ache away, and if I had tummy pain. So I come from that in my family, and my dad's grandma was like a midwife, and she was what you call fair, which doesn't mean fairy but meant knowing. So people used to come to her for knowing and things like that. So it's naturally in my blood. But at the same time, when um I grew up in, similar to you, I had trauma going on, and a very tough childhood, to be honest. And I think part of that also shaped my intuition, because
Mm,
from a young age, I could tell if people were lying. So, say somebody came in a room or whatever, and my dad would go, "How are you?" And he'd go, "Yeah, I'm right, I'm all right." And I'd think, "No, you're not." And even at a
mm,
young age, I could sense they weren't right, but they were saying they were.
mm.
And I think this made me mistrust myself a lot. And even from a young age, like I remember seeing angels on the stairs, and I remember, this is a bit traumatic, this is what I'm saying, but I think this helped, it sort of shut me down, my gifts in a way, because I remember one time being very young and my mum was leaving us alone, and I knew she was going to go and leave us. And even before she went out the door, I knew she was going. I knew she wasn't like going to come
Yeah.
back. And
Oh,
that, I mean, that's a traumatic experience, what I'm sharing. But I think it demonstrates that I knew my mum wasn't taking me on. She was like, because she wanted to do what she wanted to do. And so I just stopped trusting myself because anytime I had my own intuition, say I saw something angelic, or say I knew something, people would go, no, no, shut up, be a good girl, be quiet. So I just learned to be this good girl and learned to people please, because if I people please, then, maybe trauma won't happen at home, and I won't see things I didn't want to see, or, grew up too quick, had an old head on my shoulders, and just shut it all down, and even though I was very into it, and like you, I never felt I fitted in because I was so sensitive. I relate to your sensitivity the same. I go to school, I remember being prodded in the tummy with a pen by a teacher. And I was so upset about her doing this because she was telling me off. But if somebody told me off, it broke my heart. It
Yeah,
literally,
yeah,
I just felt like
yeah,
it broke my heart,
yeah, yeah.
you
I
know?
know exactly where you're coming from. I think one of the incidents that were really traumatic to me at school, a very old-fashioned school. The classrooms were mostly upstairs. There was a school hall, and then around the outer edge of the hall were all the classrooms. And we were made to walk slowly every time. The only way out was down some steps to get to the lower floor, and we always had to walk around the outer edge. But for some reason, I was with somebody. I can't remember who they were, but we ended up I don't know if we were rushing to get out or what, but we ended up partly walking, partly rushing. And for some reason, I ended up sitting, or I must have fallen and tripped and sat on the top step, which is obviously very dangerous when you've got all these other children trying to get out. And I was hauled away by one of the teachers. And there was this massive clock on the hall wall, and it was like the naughty clock. And I was made to stand facing the wall under the clock, and it was like the clock of shame. So that every time everybody walked round, they could see you. And I can remember the feeling now, that sick
Shame.
feeling that you get in your stomach.
Mhm.
I was absolutely mortified, and that stayed with me for years. And I must have been carrying that shame with me for years. I mean, I can laugh
Mhm.
now, but at the time, it was really serious. It was
Mhm.
awful.
Well, I was
So
laughing thinking of you stood in front of this clock, and it's not funny. It's traumatic what you're saying. But I think I'm just imagine you stood under this clock. You know what I mean? But just on a comment here, somebody's put, Rick, hi, you've joined us. Hi. But Soul Wisdom has put, I think subconsciously when you walk into a room, for example, you're checking out the energy. Is it safe? And that is really, really true. And I also think, and this was the other point which I didn't make before, but because my background is quite traumatic, I also think I used to be hyper vigilant about scanning areas to
yeah,
think, am I going to get
yeah,
hurt here? Am I going to be in a crossfire? Am I going to, is the mood good? Is my mum's
mhm,
mood good? Is my dad's mood good? And it's almost like you're cued in, like you
mm,
bat think or something. And I'm
yeah,
sure you've done that, Helen. And it,
mm,
we can be naturally intuitive, and then we'd like super hone it that way through hypervigilance because of,
mm,
the experiences we're going through
yeah.
childhood.
Yeah, and that's very, very exhausting. I think that's what, learning about trauma all these years. It's part of the trauma pattern, but so that's like your survival mechanism.
Mhm.
But on the plus side of it, I don't know if you've ever come across Dr. Elaine Aron. She's done so much work on the highly sensitive person, and it's actually a thing. So this was the key part that was missing from mine and probably many other people's childhoods, that the sensitivity wasn't understood and it wasn't supported. So you're called like crybaby, or you're like, don't, you're too sensitive for your own good. So you were made to feel ashamed of it, as though there was something wrong with you. But part of that, it's innate, it's a gift. We form 20% of the population, and we tend to be natural people who go into roles such as, healers, health workers, carers, that kind of thing. But being vigilant on noticing things is a key part of it. So the hypervigilance plus the noticing things go sort of hand in hand. But can you imagine that's your system being bombarded again? So, I was quite ashamed for a lot of the time of feeling as though I just wanted to go to sleep. And that's because your sensory bombardment. And again, we can be made to feel ashamed that we just want to cut off from people or not be in loud places. And it's very draining. So the understanding part, when you are highly sensitive, that can be another trauma that you're told, you're just being silly. Don't be too sensitive, kind of thing. So it's quite a hard journey to navigate, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think a lot of us, when we go through it, and I'm sure people listening will get it, is you just think, well, this is who I am, this is how it is. And you just put up with stuff or you don't really inquire into, maybe it's not me, maybe this is just who I am. There's nothing wrong with me,
Yeah.
but you don't. Yeah, you don't often inquire, do you? Because you don't have the skills until later. So tell
Mm.
me about your adolescence then. How was it for you as an adolescent? Did you become more intuitive? Did you shut it down more? Because that can be a time when you do open up more and yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I hated my adolescence actually because it just sort of escalated really. For some reason, my mum cut my hair really, really short, so I looked more like a boy sometimes. And again, I still didn't fit in, although it was a little bit better. We had middle schools then. I found middle school was a bit more compassionate and caring. And I found sport, that was quite a good thing. Whereas I felt as though I was just constantly surviving in first school. Middle school, I found through rounders actually, I found that I could connect, with the ball. So racket sports became my thing. So having that to focus on was a bit like something that rescued me in a way. And all of a sudden, instead of being the one that doesn't get picked for being in a team, I started to get picked. So your self-worth that gets knocked down as a child, it started to come back up a little bit in adolescence. But also there was another I think one of the things crossing over from childhood to adolescence when you talk about your intuition was that there was somebody very, very close within the family, not near, but there was somebody that I just never felt comfortable being with, but my intuition got ignored and got overridden, if that's the right word. And I think where you said about the trust, I lost my trust. So I became even more hypervigilant. So that's taught me now that if any child doesn't feel comfortable in somebody else's company, trust that they are actually saying the truth. That's their truth, and trust it. Don't force somebody, even if it's somebody maybe on the periphery of a family or in a friendship. Looking back at my life now, that was a really big issue for me. So you feel like you don't have the support in your life sometimes because of that. So that theme carried on. But in adolescence, I think because my self-worth had been really low and knocked down, when it was middle school, you start to sort of learn for exams and things, don't you? So academically, I did quite well. And I think I hung on to that or clung on to those achievements as a way of giving me a lift in my self-worth and how I felt about myself. So that was the start of me thinking, well, actually, I am quite good at something, but it sort of became my identity in a way. and that escalated. So when we go on to talk about other things. But yeah, I just found it really, really difficult. And then the other thing was, sorry if there's men watching, when us ladies start our monthly cycle, obviously we had 3 school swimming lessons. And I was the first one in my year to have to take that letter to school to excuse me once a month. And it was like, oh my God, it's me again. That was another drama, another embarrassing feature of my life. So that change, it's it is such a sensitive time, isn't it? For both boys and girls. And if it's not handled sensitively, then again, your trauma levels are building up and up and up, but we don't realise it's trauma. You just have to sort of shove it, squash it down and get on with it. So yeah, those were first and foremost in my mind for a lot of the time. What about yourself, Sarah Joanne?
It was really tough, my adolescence, because things like sort of escalated at home. So I had to look after my sisters, and my dad wasn't there much, and my mum wasn't able to look after us like consistently. So it was really, I had too much responsibility at my age. But school was a bit of a, like I was like you, I didn't like primary. I didn't have many friends. I never really fitted in. I was trying to fit in all the time. But when I got to high school, like, you had a uniform. So that was the thing at primary. We wore our own clothes.
Mm,
And I was always like the poor girl and,
mm,
scruffy or, sometimes I had to dress myself and stuff as a young child. So I didn't I didn't quite fit in clothes wise, anything. But when you get to secondary school, you're in uniform, aren't you?
yeah.
So you all look the same. So
Mm,
that really did me a lot of good. And then it was a bit of an escape because home was so tough. I made friends and they sort of accepted me for who I am. And I was sort of, I wasn't in the popular group, but I wasn't in the sort of nerdy group. I was sort of in between. So my worth built up there because people seemed to like me and the odd boy likes me. And, it just gave me that outlet, I think,
yeah,
to
yeah,
feel a bit better about myself. And in terms of, and this is probably, I don't know, it might be the same for you, but I think all along the way, though, people were always talking to me. I carried everybody's like secrets. People would always divulge or share things with me.
mm,
Um, and I'd never say anything. And I think because I never spoke about my own childhood because I was told not to talk about family and anything like that. And
mm,
and I'm similar to you. My trust was broken with the family member, and from a young age, and got told I was, not telling the truth, or and I think that it does. It has a massive impact because then really deep down, there weren't many people I really trusted. And even now, as an adult, trust is still a big
mm,
thing for me. And I
mm,
think you're right. If stuff ain't handled sensitively as an adolescent, you know, it's um, it's it's just yeah, it just builds up on that trauma level. But also, I do look back and I think I was quite intuitive. I could like I always seemed to pick up those friends who were struggling like me, and I didn't always know. But later as an adult, I remember one girl saying, "Oh, I used to love you coming round, Sarah, and you always brighten my day, and you're always dead positive." And she didn't have a clue I'd be crying on the way to hers before I knocked on. Do you know what I mean? Because stuff was tough at home. But at the same time, she was going through a lot, and I never knew she was, and it was almost like birds of a feather flock together. Like when
yeah,
you've got stuff going, you don't actually realise that you're flocking with the people in a sense of safety.
mm,
Um, and when I just want to share something about my young adult stuff as well, and how I sort of shut stuff down because around 15, 16, 17, I really got interested in intuition and all that stuff, and was was my dad because my dad could take my like headaches away and stuff like that. I was really interested in all that and in natural healing and psychic stuff, and I was just interested in all the stars and all that. And I remember saying to my dad, when I was like 17 or 16, I want to do what you do. And he said, well, you can, you can, you've got the ability to, and, you know, but he could take my pain away and then he'd dispel it out. And so I got practicing with people, but I could never get rid of the pain. So I
Ah,
could, you say you were my friend, Helen, you were my mate, and I go, come on, Helen, let me just practice, do what my dad does. Because my friends sometimes would turn up with an headache and he'd put his hands on their head and, the headache could go and stuff. It were like
mm,
they thought it were mad.
yeah,
But anyway, I did it and I couldn't get rid of it. So I'd take your headache away and then I'd take the headache, but I'd have it
mm,
then for a day.
right.
I could
Mm,
not dispel it. And now, as an adult, you know, my dad, my dad has this healing ability, but he's not empathic. I'm very, very empathic. So it was like, woof, I sponged it up. I'll take it off you, but I'm having it.
yeah,
I can't get rid of it.
yeah.
So it was at that point at 17, 'cause, yeah, around 17, I was like, oh, I can't do it, can I? I can't.
Mm,
So that was another thing where I can do it, but no, I can't. I mean, my dad would say, look, you just do this, you just do that. But obviously, I couldn't because I was empathic. Dad's not
yeah,
empathic.
yeah.
He's quite the opposite, really. So
Mm,
he might have this ability, but he's quite the opposite. He's very detached, unemotional, where I'm like a sponge emotionally. So
yeah.
that switched me off as
Mm,
well. I think very much so, like, well, I can't even do that right. Because often
yeah,
throughout my life, I think, well, I can't do it. There's no point doing this because that's going to go wrong. I know it. And I got a very negative view about myself and life. And it just shut me down at that point, really. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Did you find I know that one of the things that happened with me, what you've just made me think of then, is I tended to get a lot of things wrong at home, so I was always getting into trouble. And I think that was the other thing that made me shut down. And I think I was a bit clumsy, probably because I was so sensitive and, like you say, hyper vigilant, that I was never really relaxed.
Mm.
I think I was always on the lookout for another uproar at home or something like that. So I never felt truly settled. The other thing that you made me think of as well, just sort of going back, Sarah, was in the years of the Yorkshire Ripper. There was a time when my mum, she used to go to the local church on an evening, and she was in a choir and they did choir practice. Um, and I got this really awful, sickly feeling when she'd gone. And I couldn't understand it at all. And I had this nasty feeling that something bad was going to happen. Anyway, I was in bed, I've no idea what time it was, and I heard the door go, the front door, and the keys opening the door. And there was a bit of a commotion downstairs. But I knew Mum had returned. But what it was, she'd actually been followed that night. And I think I'd picked up on her fear. So it's just like you say, you absorbed a lot of other people's pain, and I was picking up on the things that had been happening around me. So that feeling doesn't feel good. So again, like you say, it makes you squash it down, makes you disconnect. I don't want anything to do with it. You don't. It's not knowing how to deal with it, isn't it?
It's really weird you saying this because when going back to when my mum left me on my own, it was 1980, so I was 7. And she did actually go off and didn't come back. And she did come back eventually, but that was the time of the Yorkshire Ripper. And I remember my dad being beside himself and very upset. This is quite personal, I'm sharing this. So, but my mum and dad are not on social media, so that's probably fine. But anyway, but being quite beside himself and upset because of what was going on. So, and the fear of that at that time was very, very palpable. So I find it absolutely fascinating that we both went through quite similar things around
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I know we're both
Mm,
from Yorkshire, but yeah, that's quite fascinating.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
I
but the
think
fear was palpable. Yeah.
it was, and probably at times where, we maybe had a black and white television or a radio. There wasn't that much. I suppose there were newspapers, weren't there? But parents tended to try and shelter children from it. But we obviously still pick up on things, even though, people say, oh no, don't talk about it. You can sense it. So, I was probably far more intuitive than I gave myself credit for, but I just didn't understand it at the time. So, yeah, yeah, they were not nice times, those, were they, at all?
No, no, not at all. And it's I think it's also just interesting on that point of um fear is very palpable. It's a very strong emotion, isn't it?
It is.
And
Yeah, it
it's
is.
amazing how we can all pick up on it. Even now, today, in different events, you can be, it does affect you. It does affect you in a
Yeah.
big way.
Yeah, and I think it's important, especially these days, especially this month of things that are coming out. It's quite important to shield ourselves, isn't it, and not to
Mhm.
focus in on those things, because even
Mhm.
words have energy, don't they? So even written words have energy. So we've got to be quite careful and look after ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, totally
So are
agree.
there any more? Are there any more questions, Sarah?
No, the last one was that soul wisdom of when you were checking it, walking into a room. But if there's anybody watching you want to ask questions as we go along, please do. Please say hi, and we'll answer them as we go along. We're just sharing about our journey and how we stepped more into our intuitive power. So, yeah.
Yeah. So where shall we go now then, Sarah? So we've looked a little bit at our childhoods and a little bit about adolescence. What about sort of heading into work then?
That again is an interesting thing, and I think we run patterns through our life and we don't realize. So I was thinking about this today, about what I was going to share, and I remember at 18, like being with a lad, and he was a lovely guy, and my dad sort of saying to me, you don't want to get pregnant and end up on a council estate. And there's nothing wrong with living on a council estate at all. Nothing wrong if you want to get pregnant. But for me, it was like, oh, well, I can't do that then. I'm not to do that. And I'm not to be with somebody from a council estate, which is absolute rubbish. But it's amazing how we just absorb things that we're told from a young age. And even though I was 17, 18 at the time. So anyway, um, I said, no, what, Dad? I'll have a company car before I have kids. And it's like I made a vow at 18 years old. And this lad I was with, he was lovely. His family actually did live on a council estate. He was a builder. Yeah, we ended up living together. We had a lovely couple of years, but it didn't work out. And I just then focused on my career. And it was only years later through counselling that I realised I'd made that promise. And it was like I had to live and die by that promise.
Mm,
So that, I think that whole thing there, sort of, my dad had a strong work ethic and was very much about work and career. And so I was like, right, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to show you, because that's not going
mm,
to be me. And
mm.
actually, what was wrong if I wanted to settle at 19 and have a kid? And there's nothing wrong with that. And I could have been
Yes.
very happy and lived a very intuitive life. But it
Mm,
was almost like this path took me of down a career and a masculine energy of corporate career. And you don't get me wrong, I do business coaching now, and it served me in good stead in a lot of ways. But yeah, I went down this career, and I was in Yorkshire working, and then went to a big manufacturer who made toiletries, and they asked me to move to Manchester at 19 years old, and so I moved over to Manchester, relocated, they gave me a package and everything. And then I just worked my way up through supply chain and purchasing, and had a lot of people working for me ultimately. But it was, and I met my ex-husband along the way of that, and it was all, he was very driven and very, I suppose, material minded. I I wanted to better myself, but I was never really material minded. It was almost like the opportunities came to me. I worked hard and the opportunities came to me. But when I met him, he was much more, you need to push yourself forward, you need to push yourself for promotion. and it was a bit like my dad really, and I think I just found myself pushing myself more and more and more, and just pushing and working,
Mm,
pushing and
mm,
working. I was on this wheel of pushing and
mm.
working. Um, so yeah, that's what I did, and I was good at what I did, but it was that over giving, it was that overworking, it was that over pleasing, and finding my
Yeah,
worth through that. And I did
yeah.
find a lot of worth through my career, to be fair, but it isn't necessarily the right worth. Do you know what I
No.
mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I'm similar with you that um I went, I did my O levels and then drifted into my A levels, not really knowing what I wanted to do. I ended up leaving halfway through, much to the disgust of some of the teachers, because that's quite relatively good academically. People kept saying to me, "What are you doing? You're going to make the biggest mistake of your life." But I absolutely hated the A levels. Nothing rang true for me. So I thought I need to go. I left. I need to go and get a job, and I went to work for the local authority, the finance department. Oh God, hated it. It was in the you went on a day release to do this accounting technician course. Hated that as well. And working in a big, in an open office, that didn't suit me at all. I got everything wrong. I knew people were talking about me because I was just a complete disaster. And after about 9 months, I made myself quite poorly, really. Luckily, I was still living at home, so mum and dad were able to support me. So I was able to leave, but I started looking at courses because I never knew what I wanted to do. But I used logic to decide what I'd like to do. So I knew I was quite caring and I knew I liked sport. And at the time, there was this course called remedial gymnastics that seemed to, fit with the two. I don't remember. It was like Peter Powell, they did this support package for school leavers. And I think that was in it as well. Um, but the remedial gymnast turned into physiotherapy. So I did this BTEC course, because you get so driven into A levels and you never get told about your other options. So I found this BTEC course in health studies, a national diploma, and it was like, wow, I absolutely love it because it's a related subject to what you're interested in rather than history or, economics. Like, nothing wrong with that if you like that, but it just wasn't my bag. Anyway, cut a long story short, I ended up going into physiotherapy, you know, did quite well in that. But like you, Sarah, it became, I didn't recognize it at the time, but that became me. That's what I identified as. And it gave me confidence. It did a lot for me, but take me out of that role without my so-called uniform, in a social environment, I found talking to people really, really difficult. I was all right on a one-to-one maybe, but in a group I felt I had nothing of worth to listen, to be listened up to. I was really socially inept in my younger years, so I really struggled with that. But then, yeah, like I say, for over 20 years, physio part of me was my identity until another job came up which I really struggled with, and that brought me to like a dark night of the soul episode in my life. But that was the marking point, the cut-off point that set me off back to finding who I really am. It wasn't an easy one. It was very, very difficult, but it was like this stripping away process. And I think that's, some people call it an awakening, don't they? Well, it's not all fairy dust and sparkles by any stretch of the imagination. It's
I wish
not.
it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what set me off on this path to where I am now, really. So, yeah, what about yourself? Was there a point in your life that set you off back to your true self, really?
I think, like you said, yeah, so much so. And I think, like you said, just listening to you, how you sort of strip yourself away, that statement to me really spoke to me. I just I'd met somebody who was quite abusive and controlling, and then I had this corporate career, and I was married, and had a child, my first son, but at the same time, I was just losing myself more and more in this wheel of work and this, you know, uh, the wheel of responsibility. And I even remember, like, this whole forfeiting of myself. I had my son, my oldest son, and I was due for promotion at work. And they said, I got pregnant, and they said, oh, no, no, we'll look at promotion when you come back. And and so my husband was like, no, no, they need to promote you, they need to promote you. So anyway, I ended up the deal was he was going to save up money for me to be on maternity, and that money never got saved. So I ended up going back to work at 8 weeks. Joe was 8 weeks
Mm,
old.
mm,
And
yeah.
that's even I've come to peace with that now, and I've done a lot of work around that. But I just look at, what the hell, where was I in all that? And then I went
Yeah.
back to work, and then they didn't promote. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, who am I doing this for? What am I doing? And
Yeah.
as it was, I ended up getting another job, and a much better job, and I got headhunted, and things worked out work-wise. But it's just that whole piece there of where was I? And the honouring me as a mother and who I am
Mm,
and everything else. And I just think you sort of get chipped away at in different bits, and
yeah.
we allow that to happen. I allowed that to happen. I understand in my journey, but I got to like 31, and I read a book actually, and I read a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. And I met this guy with me and my husband were on holiday in Thailand with my son, and we met this guy, and he changed his career from being an architect to an artist. And I was
Mm,
fascinated by this, like chatting to him in this bar, because I was like, oh, I'd love to do that. Like, my soul's calling me to just get away from this career. Not that I sort of realised that that's what I was feeling, but I was
mm,
fascinated by his journey. So I said, how did you do it? And how did you move from being like an architect to this
mm,
artist? And he was Irish. And he went, I read a book, and he told me about this book. So I went and bought this book. But this book was all about balancing your life and having good relationships and feeling the fear and following your heart. And the
mm,
more I read it, the more I realised, oh my God, my life is not what I want it to be. You
yeah.
know, my husband, my career, my friends, my family. Not my family so much, but I didn't have many friends outside of us two because, the controlling side. It's almost like I forfeited everything, you know. Anyway,
Yeah.
read this book, and I was like, I need to leave. And that was part of my awakening process. And it took me about the best part of a year to get the courage to go and to start seeing the truth of what I was in. And I think people say when they've experienced emotional abuse or mental or physical, any of those aspects, people say, why didn't she just leave? Why didn't she, if she was putting up with that, why didn't she just go? But you sort of lose yourself in the process, and you only start to see it when you see it. You're only
Yeah.
ready when
Mm,
you see it. And
mm,
this book helped me see it. And then I had a few things that happened. I lost my stepdad. That was a first big loss in my life. And then, found the courage to go. And then not long after that, I ended up sick off work. And just all these things fell down. And it really was a breakdown to break through. And all things went wrong in my life. But actually, they all started to go right after that.
mm,
And it was a
mm,
tough time in my life. But actually, now I wouldn't change. I'd do it all again in a heartbeat to be
yeah.
where I am now.
Yeah.
And I also think it used to frighten me listening to other people's stories of awakening. When I got on my path, I used to listen to people's stories of awakening, not quite realizing I'd already had one that had
Mm,
got me on this path.
yeah.
And I also want to say it doesn't mean you're gonna, if you're awakening or you open up and it doesn't mean you're gonna go through something like that.
Mm,
Um, but also I think it's like our life becomes uncomfortable, so we find a way then to do what our soul is calling.
yeah.
And
That's
for some
right.
people it's quite dramatic, and mine was quite dramatic. I don't think I
Yeah.
do things easily, me. I don't. I think it's just my bloody soul path. But at the same time, you can awaken and awaken in a much more gentler, formal way, and that's your path too as well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. There's no right or wrong in it at all. But it's like you say, it's your human you is trying to go down one path, but your soul you is trying to take you on another path, and that's
yes,
where the pain comes. Really, there's this disconnect.
hmm
And I mean, when you, particularly for women, and you've got a child or children, to leave a relationship when you've built your life around it, it's not an easy choice at all. You were so brave to do that. And many women are very brave to do that. But you hope that, if you are following the path of what your heart's calling you to do, that's when the synchronicities happen, the
so
support
much
comes
so.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, so much so. Right from I don't just right from my stepdad dying, the stuff that started happening, like angelic signs. I'd meet people talk to me about angels. I knew my partner now. He'd helped me, sort of um get the courage to leave and sort of gave me advice really. And then we ended up getting together, which wasn't planned. And then from then on, just there was just so much synchronicity. And I now know my husband now, my partner then, is my husband now. We've had a past life together, and
Right.
it was all just led. But I didn't have much choice. I had to trust. I had to trust
Mm,
because I didn't know what else to do because
yeah.
I felt so lost really. But it was just the best. It was the best thing, and all these synchronicities led me on my path. But yeah, what led you? What led you to your path when you like came away then from physio? What led you to this?
Uh, I think in my search for not knowing what I really wanted to do beyond my physio life, when I went down another path of what's it like, multi-level sales, network marketing kind of thing, and that was okay. But the biggest thing I gained some lovely friends from that. But one of the things was there used to be a book company that came and set up stall whenever they did like the big um, presentations once every couple of months or so. And there was this book they got all these lovely books set up, lovely prices and what have you as well. But on the side they had like this little table bargain books about £5. The book that I bought that was interested in was by Sonia Choquette, and it was Trust Your Vibes.
I love that book.
And I bought that. And the lady that actually introduced me to that network marketing, she gave me a book by Lorna Byrne, Angels in My Hair. So those were like two books that sort of catapulted me, if you like. But going back to like what you said as well, Sarah Joanne, in the past, I used to love watching the likes of Star Trek, Star Wars. Do you remember Space 1999 and Doctor
Hmm.
Who? And I loved, the thoughts of mediumship. And I remember my mum one Christmas bought me this book from Marks and Spencer's, I think it was, this thick hardback book, and it was on the supernatural. And I know my family used to think I was a bit weird because I was always the one that used to love those kinds of things. Um, so it's always been there. But yeah, those were two books that sort of that Trust Your Vibes. It brought me back to remembering, those times as a child, what I used to like. It gave me a link. It made me think, that's who I was. That's what I used to love doing, and that's what my interest was. So that sort of set me off really down that path. So yeah, where did I go from there really? It was just, I think leaving physio was a big part of it. And I'd always done some complementary therapies, Bowen therapy, some Reiki healing. I did a course with you, Sarah Joanne. You were teaching about angel tarot cards as well. Um, so, and then I gradually became aware of the ability to channel. I did did a mediumship circle with a lady, and I wrote a letter to her one day about something, and that was my introduction to being able to realize that I was channeling more than doing the mediumship side. As I was writing, I was getting information coming through. So that's how it wasn't one straight path. There were lots of little different routes. I looked at angel cards, oracle cards. So yeah, there were lots of strands to it, and it's ended up sort of, you gradually squash it down to something that you really love to do. So that was, in a nutshell, more of my path, really.
Mm-hmm.
And you've sort
Yeah.
of been brought back to your cards, haven't you? I think, and you're
Yeah. I had I was thinking earlier, it's 21 years ago this last Christmas, and my partner, who's my husband now, I thought I'd stepped away from spirituality because my ex didn't like any of that. And also because I think I was just so in that corporate side of myself. So he bought me these tarot cards because I told him, I love all stuff like that, and I've just not done anything. I've just not read anything or looked at anything like that. So he bought me these tarot cards, and that was it. I was just into these cards, and I had a reading off somebody, and she's passed now, but she helped me get on my path with cards and taught me a bit about reading with them. And she said to me, literally, like the year after, so probably 20 years ago, and she went, "You're dead spooky, you." She went, "You're going to read like me." And she went, "People are going to know you." She went, "I've got the star card here, and I can see you being a bit of a star, not like a TV star, but like, like, no, a bit more known." And I was like, yeah, I don't, I've got two young kids, and I don't know if I'm going to do it. And I didn't really believe her. And she's like, "No, honestly, you need to keep going with these cards. Don't put them down, pick them up." And she gave me a few tips, and she told me to just start practicing and start reading. And then she helped me a bit further with that. And that was it. And I used to charge £1 for readings, like £1 for people at work. And like friends. I remember going to this party and just charging somebody £1, like 4 people £1 to read
yeah,
for them.
yeah,
And that's how it sort of grew. And then I formally learned Reiki. Like, oh, I can heal. I just need to do it like via Reiki because I don't
yeah,
have to take it on, take
yeah,
all this pain on myself.
yeah,
And it just sort of led like you, there was many sort of paths. I went on a bit of a mediumship course. I went on a psychic development course and things, but cards and healing, and the coaching side is my main, and fairies. Obviously, I found the fairies along the way, and I'm really connected with the fairies and the elementals, the dragons, and all that lot. So yeah, it's like many sort of paths lead you to where you are, and it
yeah.
doesn't have to be one path either, does it? I think you
No,
just explore the journey. Just
yeah.
talking about books, because Nat has just said, have you read Brian Weiss's Same Soul, Many Bodies? And I haven't read that book, but somebody else has told
Mm,
me about that, and I probably should read it because I know I've had many lives, I've had many bodies,
yeah,
even though I'm just one soul. So have you
yeah.
read it, Helen? Have
I
you read the
haven't.
book?
I think I've heard of it, but I've never read it. No, but it makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So I might look
that
at that.
yeah, that'd be really good actually. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
so would you say that there's a certain kind of uh person? What's a typical person that tends to come to you for help, or have you found there's a common theme or a thread?
A lot of people have been quite similar to me, as in they either have been in a career and they want to change it into more a spiritual path, or they've experienced, they're quite sensitive, empathic, experienced, abuse and trauma, and they're ready to empower themselves. A lot of it's around empowerment and empowerment into who they are. And I'm sure you're probably quite similar. It's those sorts of people, and it can be many of the streams through Reiki or cards or tarot or coaching. Um, but I usually find that the people wanting to step out on the journey, or they're part on the journey and they want to move forward in themselves, and I help
Mm,
them move forward and clear the blocks, or clear away toxicity, um, show them the potential. I was thinking about this today about the cards. That lady, Ange, and God bless her soul, she's not with us anymore, but Ange showed me that potential. I couldn't believe it. I had a baby, a young toddler, and a 5-year old. There was no way I could even imagine reading
yeah.
and doing what I do
Mm,
now. But she
mm,
was like, no, honestly, pick up the cards, keep doing. And she saw that potential. And I think the tarot does show you potential in yourself and shows you what's
mm.
possible. And if you stick with it, it's quite amazing. Do you know what I mean? What
So
about you,
yeah,
the types of people that come to you?
like you say, probably very similar aspects in terms of, empowerment, feeling stuck. Self-worth is a big part of it,
Mm.
not feeling good enough. So it's healing, the wounds, our subconscious beliefs. Because I work very much, I sense movement in my body. So I channel words so people can have a conversation with my guides, which can tend to awaken their connection as well. So they can have a conversation with my guide. So it can be angelic, it can be the fae. I've had the fae come through, can be the galactics, it can be their higher self that's talking to them as well. Sometimes a loved one comes through, but it tends to be on the back of a guide. So it's not a main theme, but occasionally a loved one will come through and speak. Sometimes it's to apologize, for things that have gone on that maybe didn't work so well in the past. So there's a lot of forgiveness issues, unburdening, that kind of thing. But I can they'll they'll talk to the person that I'm with online, but then they might get me up, moving. So if people were to see me, I can sometimes be on the floor doing bit like it can look like yoga poses or physio movements. And it's like my body, because I merge with somebody else's energy, and then my hands and my body is used to clear the negativity, the negative energy that's caused
Like
the
you're like
trauma.
you're a surrogate. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I'm clearing that. So it can be that they come with a physical pain as well. So for instance, one lady came, had a really painful shoulder, restricted movement. I worked on her via our guides. The pain went almost immediately, and she had full range of movement. And the same happened with another lady who had been near on not crippled, but crippled with pain. The saying, in her spine through arthritis, really struggling with her walking, getting up on a morning, that kind of thing. I worked with her, and the next morning she was flabbergasted. She was almost back to her normal self. And that's the kind of thing that I love. But it can be a bit hard to communicate to people other than via people's testimonials. But that can happen quite a lot. I had another lady, we were actually just doing channeled guidance and messaging, and unbeknown to me, she'd got a small break in her ankle, and she'd got some really bad pain. But after the session, that totally disappeared. So physical pain is part of my work, as well as the self-worth, the underlying emotional traumas. What about yourself? What have you got any people you can remember's got
Yeah,
transformations?
I've got a few. I've got one lady that springs to mind is about toxicity. I think um because I've experienced that myself, I think that's something that people are often drawn to me to clear. And you tend to do stuff that's you've been part of your journey. And I had one lady come to me in a package. It was through Reiki and clearing toxicity. And she had a boss who was really toxic, and she was really struggling. She was about to leave a job, and I'd offered this package, and she came to me and said, "I want to leave." And anyway, we worked with the energy. We did a lot of clearing around it, upped her self worth, same, and empowered her. And in the end, the boss went and she stayed. And it helped her through that process. And it was amazing. And I've had a couple of like strong cases like that where people have been going through, say, a divorce, or I even had somebody yesterday actually was doing a clearing around a court case for the kids. And it's like they're not run of the day, everyday things, but if people are in extreme situations and they're wanting to support with it, it's particularly abusive or narcissistic or toxic, that can be quite powerful. And then with the cards, it's very similar to what I said before of showing people potential. So there's a number of people where I've shown them that they can read cards, like me saying that I'll read, or, you know, showing them that they can change their career and they've changed their career. And, I've had people come up and say, what you said to me all them years ago, you changed my life because this is what I'm doing now. And that's like, that's just amazing. But that's what Ange did for me. Do you know what I mean? And it's like that's just the power of the cards, really showing you the potential. And we've all got life will. We don't have to follow it, but they can show you what is available for you if you so wants to do it. And then with the coaching, I've had a couple of those recently actually, and one lady end of last year, she was just starting a business and she was running classes, like exercise classes, and she wanted to fill this package and run some classes, but also do some one-to-one work. And I worked with her with basic strategy and coaching, and I used the healing and used the cards through it as well, but it's overall coaching. And she went off and, we built a strategy together and she went off and did it. And I help people hold the energy of the next level of themselves, if that makes sense.
Right.
And
Yeah, it does.
she went off and she filled a spaces and a one-to-one work. And a one-to-one work was more money and started these classes. And, I've actually been to one of her classes tonight and it's just magic sometimes. And I think if you're ready to change, and even with you, I'm sure the same with you and your clients, if you're ready to change and let go, and you just try something different sometimes, because it is amazing what can
Yeah,
happen. And we're all really powerful, and I'm sure you'll agree, Helen. I end up helping people tap into what they're capable of
yeah,
releasing and letting go,
yeah,
and then empowerment. And I'm sure it's the same for you and your guides. And I've been a client of yours, and I know how amazing your work is. I came to you after my hysterectomy, didn't I? And how I felt after your session was amazing, and the stuff that came through for me was just amazing. So, but it's again, you're helping people tap into the truth of who they are.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
do you agree
That's
with
right.
that?
Totally. Yeah, I really loved how you put that. Holding the space for them to be able to step into that potential. It's brilliant, and I think some of the people that are attracted to working with me are about they've really lost any connection. They mostly get stuck in their heads because we've been taught to use this rather than this. And quite, people who've got, who are very powerful at soul level, but have really got shut off from that because of a lot of traumatic events. A lot of ladies, they're often told that they're very good at what they do, but they can't accept that they'll push it away. They don't believe that
They don't believe
self-belief.
it.
It's so so deeply wounded. And like you said before, the overgiving, the people pleasing, self-sabotage, they're all these subconscious beliefs, aren't they? Then if we can clear that gives room for the soul to grow, and to calling back in lost soul parts as well. That's a big part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just go back to the questions because, but I totally agree with what you're saying, and yeah, it's powerful. And I think, don't you, like, I know when I've been called to work with people, and, for the people watching this, will, whether they get drawn to the cards and go buy a tarot deck, or whether they get drawn to some of the books, somebody's asked about the books that we were reading, or they get drawn to our work and, want to get in touch and follow us and just have a bit of inspiration and positivity. to find the path, because the world's a noisy place out there, and it's there's a lot of things telling us we're not good enough, or we're not. It's almost like it's programmed to tell us we're not good enough. We need this stuff, and actually we don't need anything. But you've just
No.
got to go to where your heart's drawn and
Yeah.
follow that. You
Yeah.
know. So yeah, it's interesting. But Nat's just put. I just bought some tarot cards, so yeah, Nats. I would definitely pick them up every day and look at them and yeah, have a relationship. They've got their own energy. Have a relationship with them.
Yeah.
Karen Healing, you're saying thank you, ladies, this time for this. You've been really interesting. I've had my awakening a year ago and have lots of interest, so I'm trying to narrow it down. And I'll see what you say. And she's also asking for the books to be mentioned in the comments, so we can put them in the notes, can't we? Afterwards, we can
Yeah.
edit the comment above and put the
Yeah.
books in. But just on that, like you're trying to narrow it down, I would almost say I still feel I'm quite multi-passionate. If I did Reiki all day, I'd be bored out of my head. I need cards because I like to talk, as you can probably tell. So I need a mix of things. I'm a Gemini. So I want to say, don't feel you have to narrow it down. Go
Mm.
where you explore, and you will find your path. And you might find I've amalgamated a lot of what I do in the
Yeah.
coaching. It's cards, it's
Mm.
healing, and coaching. So you might find the same. What would you say, Helen, about that?
Yeah, I would say the same. I'm one that gets easily bored with just one thing. So, like you, I like mixing and matching, a bit of variety. I have a few decks of cards. I'll bring that in occasionally. There's the healing. There's the channeling. But I love talking like yourself to people. One of my gifts is actually listening, which is obviously like the part of the being clairaudient. But I think you've probably got the same gift, Sarah, that we enable people to open up, and that's the gift. Because I always used to get, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but
Still say that, me.
yeah, and it's because we have this safety energy. People feel safe. So yeah, definitely, Sarah Joanne. Don't worry. If you have got one specialist area that you want to zone in on, but you can also bring them all in depending on what you feel you need at the time.
And yeah, and Karen here, you've commented. I just want to say that if you are like us in the past, where you've been a corporate creator, you've probably been very linear and very doing one thing, one job. So actually, this whole spiritual life, it is about exploring and enjoying it. Oh, I like this blackberry and I like that strawberry. Trying the different fruits of what's available in terms of spirituality, whether it's cards, whether it's healing, whether it's art, whatever. You've just got to do it and follow it. So don't feel it has to be linear, because I think life is trying to put us in a box all the time, but actually it can be a number of things. And, we think that's sometimes wrong. If it's totally scatters our energy, then yeah, maybe we have to narrow it down a bit more. But if you're happy with a multitude of things, follow your heart.
Yeah, yeah.
Nat has said as well, we've got another question. We've got a couple here actually. Nat has said, have you ever been hypnotized back to regression like previous lives? So I'll ask you, Helen. I'll know what my answer is, but I'll ask you, have you?
Yes, that was actually a thing I'd forgotten about. That was one of my, after maybe another, I had two major Dark Nights of the Soul episodes, because I think but I'm going off a tangent there. And I saw a lady, and she took me back to a previous lifetime, because this episode in my life was so upsetting. I knew I needed to explore me more, and I wanted to look at why that had happened. And she took me back. And I was so nervous, because I'd always been interested in hypnotism, but I was so nervous for fear of that she wouldn't be able to hypnotize me, so to speak. But I think it was dead easy for her to do, because I think it was how I was imagining what hypnotism was and what it looked like, but it wasn't that. So yeah, that, and even though it gave me answers at the time, it gave me some nuggets that have made sense along my path over the years, a bit like my shamanic training as well. You think one thing's going to give you the
Mm.
answer at that time, it might give you a little bit, but actually there'll be a train of things that lead you. There's a path where you get like these. It's like following the yellow brick road, or the, what
Yeah.
is it, Hans Andersen's, what's the breadcrumbs.
Hmm.
So, if I would just say to people, if you go to a session with anybody and you think, well, I'm not really sure about that, don't dismiss it. Keep a record of what's been said or the information that's been given, because it might mean something further along your path. And that's been my path, that that regression, things have made much more sense to me, along the way, really. So it was a very,
Yeah.
very important marker.
Yeah. I'd agree. I had a past life regression, and I used to have a recurring dream when I was younger all the time, and I realised that that was my last life in that regression. So it was a life before this that I came practically straight back. And also in my last life was my husband who I'm with now.
Um,
So yeah, so that week was very life changing for me, and it really affirmed me on my path of those dreams I used to have. I used to believe they were real, and actually they were real. Do you know what I
right.
mean?
I do.
Yeah, it really deepened me into my own intuitiveness. So like you, it was a very important part of my journey, and it was just one session, and I cried a lot, I released a lot, and she said she'd never had a regression where somebody cried so much, but I think I just began to understand so much about myself and what I
Mm,
did used to dream, and then also why I was so drawn to my partner now and why we're together, and I sort of knew that in a way as well. I used to be able to look
yeah,
at his eyes and knew they could see my soul, and then I understood why, so
yeah.
it was really, yeah, it was deep,
Wow. Oh,
so.
yeah.
So I've got more questions. Somebody's put, are you both teachers? So not in the traditional sense of school
Mm.
teachers, but you know, do you teach anything of what you do? Do you teach? Do you do any teaching?
Yeah, occasionally I do, but I know I need to, I'm going to be focusing more on that, really, because I'm sort of developing what I've called soul revival writing. It's a take on journaling writing, but it's my take on it, and writing was a really important part of my journey, especially in lockdown times when we couldn't see people. Writing helped me explore myself, release a lot of negative stuff, helped me to understand it, helped me to get out of my head and into my heart, actually. So what I've learned along my path, about energy and the chakra system, you, teaching that, relaying that to people, to help them to understand themselves on a different level to what mainstream might want us to know about ourselves. In a way, that is part of our role, isn't it? Teaching people, empowering people. It's part of the empowerment, isn't it, Sarah Joanne?
Yeah, it totally is. Yeah, and um, I think we've all got knowledge to share, haven't we? And yeah, I love that. I love, 'cause like you said, writing is so powerful, and I don't think there's enough people realize the value in it sometimes. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I love that you're going to be sharing more about that. I teach Reiki. I teach people how to read cards. And yeah, that's mainly the teaching. And yeah, Reiki at a few different levels, online and in person. So yeah, we've grown to be teachers along our path, haven't we? Basically.
Mm, yeah,
So that's
yeah.
the other question. Sacred Soulscapes. I think that's Maria, actually, if I'm right. Anyway,
Yes,
she said,
it is.
"Hello, ladies.
Oh, hi,
I got a
Maria.
regression." She
Oh,
said, I got a regression done. It was amazing. And then somebody said, I like your English. Thank you. And somebody's put, where you all from? We're from, well, we live in England, in the north of England, don't we? Helen's from Yorkshire. I'm from Lancashire, but I used to live in Yorkshire.
yeah.
So, yes, that's where we're from. So, should we quickly share about what we do and what we offer? Because I'm a little bit conscious of time now. We're keeping people,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you want to, talk about how people can work with you and maybe share a
Yeah.
message or something?
Yeah, well, I've got a Facebook and an Instagram page. It's Helen Quarmby Healing. And obviously I'm on YouTube. My YouTube isn't as well developed as my other two platforms, but looking at that. I've got a website, helenquarmbyhealer.com. And I work mainly online at the moment because of the nature of my work. If I did my healing work in front of somebody, they'd probably want to run a mile. But I need my own space to be able to do that healing. It's more effective on a distant level, really. So yeah, it's mainly highly sensitive women, although some of the women that come to me, there's that level of not understanding or not realizing that they are sensitive. They're thinking that there's still something wrong with them, that kind of thing. But it's releasing the old stories, so it's clearing the energies, because if we have had a challenge in life, which many of us have, we're still holding on to that, and it can play out on a physical level. So, if we've had a lot to deal with, we can hold ourselves very tight and very tense, be uptight. That's what tends to get us stuck in our heads, not trusting what our heart's trying to tell us. So I can heal on a physical level by releasing the underlying emotional trauma. But like you say, so similar to you, Sarah Joanne, that people don't always want to come and talk about it, so that won't be the first thing that they mention, but it might be that they've lived a bit of an abusive life, or they might have lived in a family where they've observed it or witnessed it, or they're just very highly sensitive, and it's been just a constant thread in their lives, a bit like me, whereby life has felt very, very harsh, but it all mounts up. Also, people who are not sure about their path, my guides have tended to talk people through, how they might do things differently in the business. That's come through sometimes.
Mhm.
But on the whole, it's about self-worth, self-care and self-love, healing on a physical level. Um, and like you say, empowerment, but it is mainly ladies. I would never rule out, a very sensitive man. I've worked with a couple of gentlemen who are highly sensitive, but on the whole, it is ladies. So they can contact me via those main methods, really. What about yourself,
And
Sarah?
we could put all the details in the comments, couldn't we, on
Yeah.
the YouTube? And I
Mm,
definitely say, people who already follow, say follow me, go follow Helen, vice versa, and yeah, share the love and share because if somebody's following the page, somebody might see it and then they follow it, and it's like little lights across. We're sharing
yeah,
lights. That's what I
yeah,
see it like.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm mainly focusing. I do a lot of readings. It's sort of bread and butter stuff that, but I'm mainly sort of being drawn to this year more of supporting people in spiritual businesses and or businesses that people have got a spiritual interest in coaching.
Mm,
Um, because I'm finding that's a lot where my power is, because I can use a lot of the skills like the fairies or the elementals might come in, the goddesses. I had one with the goddesses the other month and was asking about an idea in the business, and then the goddesses came in and they just showed them, and they're now off running that, and it's lovely to see. So I think with my own background of business and then my experience in the spiritual side as well, that's sort of coming into, I'm being drawn more to offer that. But I obviously do the readings, and I also have a membership with the fairies and unicorns and dragons to connect with those. But you can find me on Facebook at Sarah Joanne oh 07. If you search on there, or sarahjoanneashurst.com. And yeah, like, if any of you, if you watch this and you want to ask some questions and go ask questions on here, or fire questions over to us, or just understand just give us a follow, because Helen does regular lives, you do regular lives and messages, don't you? I do
I
regular
do.
card readings and messages, and we're both quite active on Facebook and sort of developing more in YouTube. And yeah, there's a lot of goodness that we give out for people to follow and see as well, isn't there? Yeah,
They do,
sure.
yeah. Do you want to draw a card for everybody, Sarah?
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm going to ask the angels to give us a message. Do you know, it's really funny. I used to teach with this deck. It's the Power Angels deck, and it's a very empowering deck. It's by Radley Valentine. And I'm going to be doing another course in May or June to teach it physically, to teach tarot. I love the traditional tarot, but I love angel tarot. I love the lightness of angel tarot. Um, and it's funny, I've been drawn back to this deck so much this week. I've been using it loads. So let's just see what comes out for this. Anybody who's watching, no matter when you watch it, no matter when you watch this live, even if you watch it, you know, a year later or whatever, this is relevant for whenever you watch it. Okay. So the card I've got is New Beginnings. Okay. So I had to smile at this when it poked out because, you know, we've been talking about how we started on our journeys and the beginnings that have happened in our life. And I'm just laughing at the irony of the card. So I feel like anybody who's been watching us tonight or, you know, taking part and commenting, and thank you everybody for watching and commenting. Um, the meaning of the card is it's time to look ahead at a new journey, a new pathway, and to look back and maybe forgive yourself for the past. Look back and it's a bit like taking inventory of the past, of what you need to let go of the past. And this is really relevant right now at the time of we're moving from the year of the snake into the year of the fire horse. So, you know, this has been all about shedding skin and, you know, are there old patterns or things that you keep repeating in your life that you need to change and let go of? And, you know, if so, it's directing you to say, right, I don't want that in my life anymore. I need to let go of it. Which new path am I taking now? What do I want to do moving forward? Um, and I think the mountains ahead, there's like a family looking ahead at the journey. And I feel like we often think, well, I want to go here, but I don't have a clue how I'm going to get there. But it doesn't matter. Take the first step.
Yeah.
So if there's something you've heard tonight and you think, oh, I want to read that book, or yeah, I want to maybe watch Sarah's lives or Helen's messages, and you know, I might speak to Helen because I have a lot of pain. You know, like follow the nudge, just go with whatever, and even if it's just that past life regression, it's not even with something with us, it's something with somebody else. It's like follow the nudge, follow where you're going. It's like where you
Yeah.
want to be, take that next step. You might not know where it's going to lead you, and this is really what it's saying, but it's saying if you feel like you're on the edge of a new beginning or edge of a new start, you are, but you've got to let go of the past and we can't keep doing what we're doing and expect to get the same results. We've got to do
Yeah.
something different.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's
Oh,
it,
that's
new beginnings. That's the
brilliant.
message.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. And that was the deck you taught me with as well. I loved that course. It was
Oh, bless
fantastic.
you, thank you.
So
It's
if
really funny how
anybody
I've picked it up again. Go on, yeah.
if anybody has the opportunity to do that course with Sarah Joanne with those cards, I would really recommend it. It's so easy to follow. Sarah makes it dead easy to follow. And she's got this knack of giving you that self-belief that you can actually do it, you know. So don't have any qualms about following Sarah with that. It's
Bless you.
brilliant.
Bless you. Thank you. Thank
You're
you. So, what about
welcome.
you? Do you and your guys fancy giving us a message? Because that'd be really special. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tune in and see. I do close my eyes, everybody, so don't be perturbed by what I look like. Usually start off by saying we're here or we're all around you. That's just a way of sort of recalibrating, really, and tuning in. But I'll ask my guys for a brief message. They're saying all right, and we'll see what comes through. So yes, indeed, we are here all around you, watching all around you, holding you close together as you familiarize yourselves with your intuitive powers yourselves. By being here, you have been recalibrating yourselves for the energy of these women holding the space here and talking about their lives is having a frequential vibrational influence over you that's enabling you to step over the barrier, or that, as Sarah Joanne mentioned, crossing over from one aspect of your life to another. So by feeling into the power of what's been said here, you have been enabled to step forward and over that line in the sand, so to speak, to enable you to make that new start and to make headway. You've had a head start by being here, and those that shall see this at any moment in time will also be enabled and empowered vibrationally to loosen the grip of their old ways, to enable them to step forward, to listen to, and to get out of the heads and into the heart. So familiarize yourself with your lives. Take stock of what's been going on for you, for there will be aspects of your story that mimic or match or feel like something that which has been spoken about here tonight. And doing the work on yourselves relies on you being able to go within, which means looking at yourself, being able to recognize the patterns within yourself. But um, you may only do this if you are prepared to step away from those aspects of your life that turn your attention away from doing this. So clear out the old in order to bring in the new, make space in your life, and transitioning from one life practice to another takes time. So be patient and loving of yourselves through this process. Namaste. Thank you. There you
Thank
go.
you, Helen's guys. Thank you, Helen. Oh, that
You're
was so
welcome.
lovely. And
Thank
so
you.
aligned with that card as well.
Yeah. So it just goes to show that, if we trust that, we have all our guides, don't we? We've got our spirit team around us all the time. It's just signaling to them that you're actually ready to start and listen and follow. But look, as we've said before, the fear plays a big part in cutting us off. So if you can work with yourself to calm your body, nervous system regulation, that kind of thing, that helps you to tune in, to recalibrate your frequencies, doesn't it? Makes such a
It really
difference.
does. That was so
Yeah.
lovely, Helen. I just love that message. Thank you. And how special for all of you being part of this tonight. It's just, what Helen's guys was best saying, as part of watching this, you've had a recalibration yourself. It's helping you move
Mm,
forward on your path, and that is just
yeah.
so special.
That's
So,
brilliant,
yeah,
isn't it? Thank you.
thank you, angels and guides. It's just, yeah, it's such a blessing in itself listening to that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
And Sacred Souls gets Maria said, great message, ladies. Thank you, Maria. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. It's lovely.
So
Well,
give
thank
us
you to
all a follow.
everybody. Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that would be super. Let's support one another, because we're here to, not just be here for ourselves, but to support other
You.
people.
Hmm.
Mm, yeah,
Totally, totally.
yeah,
And if you're watching this, not live and you're watching it on a replay, please comment, drop us a message. Yeah, we are here to serve and be of service, to share light and love and help you, find your light and your magic within. So yes,
yeah.
thank you.
Brilliant, Sarah. Thank you. That's been so nice. I've enjoyed that, and it's been lovely to have everybody joining in the conversation. It's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
have we come to the end then? Do you think?
We have, yes, we have. So we'll see you all soon. Hopefully do another live at some point or whatever, but if not, we'll see you all on our separate pages. And yeah, thank you
Yeah,
for joining us and all the comments and everything else.
yeah,
So thank
yeah.
you.
Take care,
Right.
everybody.
Yeah.
Bye
Bye bye,
bye.
everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.